Today we're doing section 4.8, day 1, and we're going to discuss the inverse of sine and cosine. So we are going to be kind of referencing our unit circle right now. We're going to discuss the different degrees that you could see and then the output. So you're going to go ahead and make this table. We're going to be adding several columns. So the first one we'll have is a negative pi over 2. Then we'll have a negative pi over 3. Then we'll have a negative pi over 4, negative pi over 6, 0, and then it's going to be the same values, but now they're just going to be positive. So I have pi over 6, pi over 4, pi over 3, and pi over 2. So notice that the possible values for the inverse of sine go from negative pi over 2 to positive pi over 2. There is no other values that your answer could be. That should actually be a theta there. So now if you have your unit circle handy, it makes this pretty easy. We're just going to be taking all the y values. So when the angle is negative pi over 2, the y value is negative 1. When it's negative pi over 3, it's negative root 3 over 2. When it's negative pi over 4, it's negative root 2 over 2, negative 1/2, 0, and then it's the same values, just positive. Now, obviously, when you have this chart written out, these problems are very easy to do. So tomorrow we will start by using this, but then again, the goal is to slowly phase this out, and you need to be able to start doing it from memory. So like I said, the next two examples are very easy. All you have to do is look at the chart. Tomorrow we're going to phase that chart out and you have to do it from memory. So to figure out the angle when the answer is root 3 over 2, that comes from an angle of pi over 3. Okay, so again, it also, you have all your coordinates memorized, so as long as you can remember the y value. So for sine of the inverse of sine of negative 1/2. So I know positive pi over 6, that's when the y value is 1/2. Because it's negative, my angle will be a negative pi over 6. So now we're going to make a similar table, but now we're going to use cosine. So there is slight difference for cosine. So sine goes from negative pi over 2 to positive pi over 2. Cosine goes from 0 to pi. So we're going to start by 0, pi over 6, pi over 4, pi over 3, pi over 2, 2 pi over 3, 3 pi over 4, 5 pi over 6, and pi. So again, looking at the unit circle, cosine is now the x value, so we're going to take all my x values. So when the angle is 0, cosine is 1. Then we have a root 3 over 2, a root 2 over 2, a 1/2, a 0. When I get into the other side, it's now negative 1/2, negative root 2 over 2, negative root 3 over 2, and negative 1. So it's very important to remember what the possible bank of options is. So like I said, sine goes from negative pi over 2 to positive pi over 2 for your answer choices. Whereas for cosine, the answers have to go from 0 to a positive pi. So that's all for today. We're going to do some practice on this tomorrow. Again, we are going to do this from memory, so you need to really make sure that you know your coordinates really well for this for tomorrow.